Welcome to Community Church Unitarian Universalist. I'm your worship associate, Michelle Firestone. I'm very happy to be here with you this morning. Community Church is a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. Please look to your weekly email for announcements. Kathy has a special announcement.
Actually, I have two. The first is that since we're in ministerial search, the UUA would like for as many people in the congregation as possible to participate in a Zoom on December 13th called Break Barriers, Build Beliefs. It's about examining prejudices and, and finding some that you may not be aware of. It's at 11 o'clock on December 13th for 3 to 4 hours. There's no cost associated with it. Please let Deborah know or me know so we can send you the link to get registered for that. And then I want to remind you that December 14th is a congregational meeting. The December meeting is to approve the budget and to choose a nominating committee. But this year, we're also going to be approving the sanctuary resolution, which has been updated, some bylaws that were updated, and the covenant of right relations, which has been updated. So we have a fair amount of business. I hope you'll all stay after the service that day.
Thanks to Jim and I think Brad for our Christmas tree. Yep. So Jim and Jerry, I think, put up the lights this morning, and next week we'll put up some ornaments. So please either bring an ornament from home, maybe your favorite ornament, or we have ornaments here that we can put up, and we'll do that maybe right after the service next week. We are delighted to welcome back into our pulpit this morning, Alicia Cooke. Alicia is a high school social studies teacher with a varied background in healthcare policy, community organizing, and climate justice advocacy. She's been a member of CCUU since 2013. She's on our worship ministry, and we try and get her into the pulpit as often as we can, as often as she's able. I know she's a cat lover also, and a cat mom. It's always a joy to have her with us. We'd like to welcome any new and returning visitors this morning. We hope you'll stay after the service for refreshments and fellowship. And in the spirit of fellowship, please turn to your neighbors, especially those you might not know, and say hello. It is our ritual to light a chalice invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. Please join us in singing the words of chalice lighting. The words are printed in your order of service. And I skipped over the opening words. Alicia will offer our opening words.
Good morning. Good morning. Our call to worship this morning comes from Wendy Bartell and Lynn Gardner. From our separate joys and struggles, we come here to find the peace of balance, to find the blessing of restlessness. All are welcome. To follow, to lead, to teach, to learn. All are welcome. To join in the dance, to catch our breath. All are welcome. To give generously, to receive gratefully. All are welcome. If you are steady and composed, if we feel completely lost, if we don't know what we are feeling, this community has a place for us. Here we matter and we are loved. If you are steady and poised, if you feel completely lost, if you don't know what you feel, this community has a place for you. You matter, you are loved.
Let's sing to the children of the world.
And our first reading this morning comes from John O'Donohue. It's called Blessing for the Interim Time. When near the end of day, life has drained out of light, and it is too soon for the mind of night to have darkened things. No place looks like itself. Loss of outline makes everything look strangely in between, unsure of what has been or what might come. In this wan light, even trees seem groundless. In a while it will be night, but nothing here seems to believe the relief of darkness. You are in this time of the interim, when everything seems withheld. The path you took to get here has washed out. The way forward is still concealed from you. The old is not old enough to have died away. The young is still too young to be born. You cannot lay claim to anything in this place of dusk. Your eyes are blurred and there is no mirror. Everyone else has lost sight of your heart, and you can see nowhere to put your trust. You know you have to make your own way through. As far as you can, hold your confidence. Do not allow confusion to squander this call, which is loosening your roots in false ground, that you might come free from all that you have outgrown. What is being transfigured here is your mind, and it is difficult and slow to become new. The more faithfully you can endure here, the more refined your heart will be for your arrival in the new dawn.
Now is our sacred time of joys and sorrows. If you're online, you may write your joys and sorrows in the comments section to be read aloud, or in person, you may write them in the cards to be passed out by our greeters. Please remain seated for hymn number 194, Faith is a Forest.
Like It should be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak to me in all I do and say. Seas are both meek and strong are Saturday. Dignity shines undipped by bigotry stand. Justice be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak to me in all I do and say. Fortune and famine like the swift winds of chance. Sorrow and pleasure seem united in dance. Whatever life is, where I read, in compassion with all I need. Mercy be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day.
From Liz Trotter, we welcomed Luna Joyce into the world on Wednesday, my first granddaughter, so overjoyed. From Linda Asaro, I went with my daughter to have her cat of 12 years put down. I'm so sorry. From Kathy, a big concern. With ICE expected any moment, I have a huge concern about all immigrants, legal or otherwise, as we face the challenging situation. And from Jim, a sorrow that so many of our neighbors live in fear of ICE and Border Patrol. Yeah. And from Alicia, another former member of our congregation, Ilia, is that her? Ilia Jones is battling stage 4 cancer. She is seeking to stay at home with her daughters as long as possible. Prognosis is less than a year. Please keep her in your thoughts. And we'll light 2 more candles, one for the joys still bubbling up, too new to share, and one for the sorrows that we cannot yet put into words. Know that we hold you in our hearts. Now let's just pause for a moment of silence, recognizing the joys and sorrows of those in our community, spoken and unspoken.
I want to preface our next reading. Our next reading comes from the book Unfollow by Megan Phelps Roper. This is one of the best books I've ever read. If anyone has heard of the Westboro Baptist Church, very notorious church, and I'm going to say more about them in the message today. But Megan was part of this very notoriously homophobic and xenophobic church for many years, eventually left. And the part of this book that I'm going to quote is just for context. Her church had been going through a very difficult time with some internal divisions that were sort of starting to push her out. And often these moments of clarity come to us when we're really not looking for them. So in Megan's case, she was painting her family member's house when these thoughts started to come on to her. So that's what I will read from right now. My arm continued to drag the paintbrush up and down, but my pulse and thoughts were racing. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one for another. I couldn't believe how our love within the church had been warped beyond recognition by the elders' unscriptural will to punish, by their implacable demands for unquestioning obedience, and by their pernicious need for superiority and control. They had developed a toxic sense of certainty in their own righteousness, seizing for themselves the role of the ultimate arbiter of divine truth. And now they seemed willing to lay waste to anyone who disagreed with them. It was a heinous arrogance and sinfulness that could not be denied. And in a moment of horrifying clarity, I finally saw what had eluded me for so long. We had all been behaving in the exact same way towards outsiders. It was as if we were finally doing to ourselves what we had been doing to others for over 20 years. My eyes widened and my face flushed hot, overtaken by panic and shame and regret and humiliation in the split second it took my mind to find a way to make sense of the chaos that the church had become. What if we're wrong? What if this isn't the place led by God himself? What if we're just people? And I felt sure that it was all true. I crossed a chasm in that split second, pursuing a thought my mind had never truly imagined and now could never take back. With stark clarity, I understood that whether the church was wrong or right, I was a monster. If we were wrong, then I'd spent every day of my life industriously sowing doom, discord, and rage to so many. And not at the behest of God, but of my grandfather. I had wasted my life only to fill others with pain and misery. And if the church was right, then asking those questions and even beginning to consider their implications was an unforgivable betrayal of everybody. And of the ideals I dedicated my life to defending. In my mind, I was a betrayer already. I thought of my mother, and the guilt was crippling. I didn't deserve to be part of this body of believers. The Lord was done with me, an Esau, after all, already condemned. Overwhelmed by a sudden pressing need to leave that instant, every part of my body hummed with a single vicious accusation. You don't belong. My eyes squeezed shut, my whole face twisting instantly into desperate sobs that I tried to suffocate by cutting off the air to my lungs. In the span of a few seconds, my world had disintegrated, slipping through my fingers like so much sand. So we don't have any kids. That's good. As a part, I let you know I dropped the F-bomb just once in this sermon, but it's part of a quote, so I feel like I have to do it. Sorry, Abigail, but you can handle it, I think. Yeah. Okay. So Unitarian Universalism has always reminded me a little bit of life in a tourist town. Yes, some of us are from here, but many, or maybe even most of us, just kind of wandered in one day and fell in love and didn't leave. We grew up in other towns, maybe smaller or larger or less friendly. Maybe we didn't have many people around us who looked like us or thought like us. Maybe we thought we would live our whole lives in the place that we were from because it was something we were used to. We questioned whether there were other places to live, and we were told yes, but not as good as here, so what's the point? And then one day we took a chance and wandered off into something new and stimulating and very different. And we're surprised to find that we could thrive here. Well, such is my story. I wandered into this faith one day and I just didn't leave. But If, again, faith is like a town, then I didn't just buy a ticket into here. I wandered homeless for a while, visiting around in no particular plan. I existed in the place between where I was from and the unknown destination of where I was going. A long layover in liminal space. I love a good conversion story. Finding a faith that fits you is a huge life shift, and it can be exhilarating, scary, life-saving. My favorite is the knockdown, drag-out variety of conversion that the subject didn't even ask for. The writer C.S. Lewis was famously the most dejected and reluctant convert in all England, in his words, when he fell to his knees in 1929 and embraced Christianity. And the writer Anne Lamott said, "I did not mean to be a Christian. I was very clear about that. My first words upon encountering the presence of Jesus for the first time 12 years ago were, I swear to God, I would rather die." But Anne, too, who envisioned the Holy Spirit as a little cat lingering outside her door, eventually gave in and opened the door to that little cat, saying, "Fuck it, come in, I quit." Yes, I love a good conversion story, but there's something I love even more, and that is a narrative of lost faith, of deconversion. Depending on what metaphor you want to use, deconversion is where you are after the lights have turned off, or after you've landed from your fall, after you've left home and face an indeterminate journey ahead. Sometimes the process is long, sometimes short. Sometimes it's joyful or sorrowful, or both, or neither. Sometimes it turns out to have been an interlude between two faiths, but it doesn't need to be. The process may go on for your whole life or trap you in a loop. It can be so many complex and poignant and dynamic things, and I think it's worth talking about this process of deconversion, especially as distinct from conversion. Conversion can happen in an instant, although it's debatable how genuine that would be. But I do not think deconversion happens in an instant. But I do think that the whole process can begin unfolding before we've even been made aware. Maybe you read a book or take a class, or someone makes an offhanded remark that just pricks your brain in just the right way. A doubt surfaces, so unthinkable that it's brushed aside immediately. But then, like Anne Lamott's little cat, it keeps popping up. One question paves the way for another, opening up the space for doubt just a little bit more. And one day you realize that the unthinkable is now the unavoidable, and it's time to leave. I imagine many of you have been through a process something like this, and maybe right now you're remembering what that was like for you. For the former Saturday Night Live star Julia Sweeney, the process lasted years and underwent many iterations before she landed in a comfortable place. In her absolutely brilliant one-woman show, Letting Go of God, Julia recounts her journey, how she started with a literal interpretation of the Catholicism she was raised with, which gave way to a more mythical and symbolic understanding. And when that interpretation also raised too many questions for her, she abandoned Christianity in favor of Buddhism, still trying to preserve some fragment of her understanding of a God at work in the universe. But when those tenets no longer seemed logical to her, she switched to a view of nature as God. And then when the true harshness of nature caused her to abandon that framing, she spun her wheels around Deepak Chopra and quantum mechanics for a while, until one day she's walking through her backyard, and the thought comes to her unbidden. As she tells it, I realized there was this little teeny-weeny voice whispering in my head. I'm not sure how long it had been there, but it suddenly got just 1 decibel louder. It whispered, "There is no God." And I tried to ignore it, but it got a teeny bit louder. There is no God. There is no God. Oh my God, there is no God. This ultimate step on her faith journey was not looked for, and it was not hoped for, but it had found her all the same, as insight often does. So this morning I shared a reading with you from One Story of Deconversion, which was Megan Phelps Roper's. Megan was born into what the journalist Louis Theroux called the most hated family in America. Her grandfather, Fred Phelps, was the pastor of Westboro Baptist Church in Topeka, Kansas. And her large family constituted the majority of its members. From a very young age, she joined her family's public protests on the streets every single day after school, holding aloft signs such as "God hates you" and "Thank God for dead soldiers." And dozens more are filled with homophobic hate speech that I'm not going to quote here. The church had its origins in her grandfather's virulent homophobia. But over the years, it added new enemies: trans people, Muslims, atheists, Jews, and even the military, because Fred Phelps believed that soldiers were killed in action as punishment for the military's tolerance of homosexuality. All these positions were ostensibly rooted in Old Testament verses, often taken out of context. But what really grounded Megan in her faith was the unanimous hatred that her family endured from the outside world. The more they were hated, her mother reminded her, the more it proved that God favored their family above all others for rejecting the sins of the world. But if Julia Sweeney's deconversion was primarily an inner journey, Megan's owed a lot to those people outside her church. An avid Twitter user, Megan vigorously defended her family's theology online, and she did not fear engaging with her critics. But as she shared in a later TED Talk, which you absolutely must watch someday, in the midst of that digital brawl, a strange pattern developed. Someone would arrive at my profile with the usual rage and scorn. I would respond with a custom mix of Bible verses, pop culture references, and smiley faces. They would be understandably confused and caught off guard. But then a conversation would ensue, and it was civil, full of genuine curiosity on both sides. How had the other come to such an outrageous conclusions about the world? People I'd sparred with on Twitter would come out to the picket line to see me when I protested in their city. A man named David ran a blog called Jewlicious, and after several months of heated but friendly arguments online, he came out to see me at a picket in New Orleans. He brought me a Middle Eastern dessert from Jerusalem, where he lives, and I brought him kosher chocolate and held a "God hates Jews" sign. There was no confusion about our positions, but the line between friend and foe was becoming blurred. So from there, a slow spiral began for Megan as her new friends started to plant seeds of doubt within her, gently pointing out inconsistencies between the words of Jesus and the words of her family. Megan says, "Once I saw that we were not the ultimate arbiters of divine truth, but flawed human beings, I couldn't pretend otherwise. These shifts in my perspective contributed to a larger erosion of trust in my church, and eventually it made it impossible for me to stay. In spite of overwhelming grief and terror, I left Westboro." So there she was at her lowest, just outside the church, asking herself what was the first step that she should take in that time with the rest of her life. And she chose to read, to lock herself away from a world she wasn't quite ready for, and consume all the wisdom and knowledge that her church had long rejected. Along with her younger sister Grace, who left the church with her, she rented a room in a faraway town where she knew no one, and traveled there with Hemingway, Dawkins, and Nietzsche, and others. Megan and Grace would read all morning, pause for lunch, and then pick up reading again in the afternoon. It's an excellent reminder of what a fertile time deconversion could be. Your mind open to new ideas or to new perspectives on old ones. The sharp pain of having one worldview collapse in your mind is an opportunity for it to be replaced with something. Maybe just a small shift to a different variation on what you believed before. Maybe something entirely more earth-shattering. And not just for ourselves either. We may conceive of deconversion as an inner personal journey, and yet it has a way of pulling other people in our lives into its orbit. When the Christian musician Audrey Assad quietly removed that she had put aside her faith, I could tell from the comments under her videos that so many of her fans felt betrayed. I mean, Audrey had been on their team, and she sang so beautifully and soulfully about themes that brought them closer to God. How could she not feel that same closeness herself? And then there was the minister Joshua Harris, author of I Kissed Dating Goodbye, which was a tiresome relic of the evangelical purity culture of the 90s. The book criticized mainstream dating and, like many books of the same era, placed the burden of maintaining abstinence on young women, and also the blame if that abstinence failed. The book harmed countless young men and women, including me. I lost my best friend when he became radicalized to its sexist worldview. And years later, Harris took accountability for this harm. He announced that he was, first, deeply sorry for the fear-based theology he had spouted, and a little while later announcing that he and his wife were divorcing due to big changes in their lives, and finally admitting that he had left his Christian faith. And so there he was, no wife, no job, and legions of millennials to apologize to. And Megan, of course, was also one of those high-profile deconverts. Her decision to leave her faith was wrapped up not just in the grief of leaving her family, but also the notoriety of her family's noxious beliefs, which had hurt so many people. Who would possibly embrace her now? And what could she possibly do with her life that would allow her to outrun that Phelps name? For Megan, Joshua, and Audrey, their losses of faith had high stakes because of their public profiles. But in our own mundane lives, we also have people who we may be disappointing or hurting as we navigate a faith transition. Faith can be so wrapped up in different aspects of our identity as to be utterly destabilizing to the rest of our lives when lost. Many familial and social relationships do not survive a deconversion. From that perspective, there's a lot of practical reasons to stand still in our faith lives. And really, only one good reason to go through deconversion at all. Because working out what we believe about the world and beyond the world is a fundamental task of human existence. As Megan later wrote about her reevaluation and deconversion as relates to her family, it wasn't the desire for an easy life that led me to leave. Losing them was the price of honesty, a shredded heart for a quiet conscience. So where does this journey end? I've read many deconversion stories, and not a single one has ended with, I stopped believing, the end. I don't think anyone ever truly finishes a faith journey. And if they do, maybe it wasn't faith at all. Maybe it was just a list of beliefs learned once, never to be re-examined again. Joshua Harris listed out several phases of his post-Christian journey, including skeptical, nuanced, evangelical egalitarian, melancholy, unsure seeker, and happy, unsure seeker who still prays to Jesus and visits church but is less triggered towards religion because nobody has this figured out human being. As for Audrey Assad, While her fans were mourning her departure from Christianity, she tried to explain the beautiful point that she was at with her current faith life. To be honest, she wrote, I can't predict the future, and I don't know where life will lead me. And I consider no doors to be closed ones. There are only curiosities. There is only presence. There is only gratitude. And those are the things that I practice. Curiosity and presence and gratitude are my prayer life. In pain and bliss and everything in between, whatever or whoever God is, I am still in love. So whether or not it makes sense to pray if you don't know who you're praying to, whether or not your faith requires a label or an endpoint, I'll leave that up to you. And that's the point. The journey is yours. So take a moment now to reflect on something you've stopped believing in your life. Then take a moment to reflect on something you gained from that. Did it allow you to admit something you had known to be true for some time, and in doing so feel a little more free? Did it allow you to really embrace a philosophy or a worldview that you'd always been drawn to? Did it help you to distance yourself from people who were causing you harm? Did it cause you to disappoint someone important to you? And in doing so, maybe open up a much needed conversation? Did it perhaps pave the way for you to come here? Well, no one is saved into Unitarian Universalism, at least not in a theological sense. So now I depart from my initial analogy. Our faith is actually not a destination, it's more of a living journey. Within the confines of our principles, and of course we use that word confines very loosely, one can cycle through conversions and deconversions of many sorts. And in that sense, our church is a privilege. If we adhere to our principles, our church can provide the elusive safe space that so many need in which to question their theology or doctrines or values. And like our faith itself, this safe space is also not a final destination. It's an ever-shifting idea for our community to coalesce around as we continually ask ourselves, are we giving seekers what they need? Is ours truly a safe space for people seeking to pull at the threads of their beliefs, even if those threads feel outrageous or threatening to us? Do we allow newcomers to question and wrestle with the values they find here? Or do we demand, either through our words or behavior, that they arrive at our door with those values already in place? Had Megan Phelps Roper showed up at our door, fresh from Westboro Baptist, what would she have found? Would we have been ready? Her spiritual and social views not yet fully reformed. Her values not quite yet what we might consider to be sufficiently liberal or sufficiently UU. Deconversion doesn't mean you've suddenly been handed a package of new values. And the initial time of a lost faith or the building of a new one can be awkward and full of missteps, and maybe even offensive to people around us. But to truly hold someone in community is to make space fully for who they are and who they are becoming. And as losing a faith so often means losing a community, the role that we can and must play for these seekers is clear. It's logical to say that faith makes a community, like a church, but actually many anthropologists, historians, and philosophers would disagree with that. There's many who say the human need for community is the place from which faith springs. And I'll leave it to you to decide which you think comes first, community or faith. But in this space, we do know that we don't need a shared cosmic theory of everything to build our community. So come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come on your own beautiful journey of unknown destination. Come. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be.
Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Members' and friends' generosity help us do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online, by text, or in person this morning. Please remain seated for our offertory hymn, number 4, I Brought My Spirit to the Sea.
I brought my spirit to the sea. I stood upon the shore. I gazed upon infinity. I heard the waters roar. And then there came a sense of peace. Some whispered of my soul. Some ancient ministry of stars that made my spirit whole. And brought my spirit to the trees that bloomed against the sky. I touched each wandering chemistry to know if God was God. And then I felt a bitter flame that pierced deep and my tears. Oh, my heart rose from beneath to leave me as he is.
Our benediction comes from Rita Dove. This alone is what I wish for you, knowledge. To understand each desire has an edge. To know we are responsible for the lives we change. No faith comes without cost. No one believes without dying. Our closing hymn, I don't know.
Our closing hymn is 304.
You may rise in body and/or spirit.
Fierce unrest sees at the door of all
Please join in the words of extinguishing the chalice from your order of service. We extinguish the chalice here that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are together again. Please join us for refreshments and fellowship in the fellowship hall.